isn't this how inflation starts, right? By increasing the money supply, isn't that exactly how inflation starts? And yes, that's how inflation starts. Prices on nearly everything from eggs to milk to gas have skyrocketed, and we're all feeling that. Trust me, there is not a single person on earth that is not feeling the effects of inflation. The big story of the day, new data reveals that the White House could be pushing us towards a stock market crash, one the likes that we have not seen since the Great Depression in 2024. Hey, if you're just tuning in, my name is Christopher Yule, and we cover the biggest headlines of the day and what the AI trading data says about it. And if you're interested in that too, be sure to definitely hit the subscribe button down below. And be sure to head to ovtlyr.com to see why outliers win. Now, new data reveals a crash not seen since the Great Depression could hit in 2024. Now, this is coming from Fox Business, and they say it's if the White House and Congress doesn't cut spending soon, the results could be catastrophic. So what do they mean by that? Let's go through the story here. A growing amount of data indicates there is a gigantic economic crisis that could be right around the corner. If the White House and Congress do not cut inflation-causing government spending soon, the results could be catastrophic. The article goes on to say that the never-before-seen levels of money creation were fueled by policies set by the Federal Reserve, which encouraged Congress to spend more money and keep interest rates extremely low, despite warnings from economists about the threat of future inflation. I remember at the time while we were going through COVID, right? Going through the pandemic and everybody's getting their stimmy checks, right? The $700 we all got. I remember thinking to myself, isn't this how inflation starts, right? By increasing the money supply, isn't that exactly how inflation starts? And yes, that's how inflation starts. And I remember thinking at the time, how are they going to justify this, right? At the time, we were still seeing, the super low inflation, and the prices hadn't catastrophically skyrocketed in basically everything that we touch now. And I remember Jerome Powell, Janet Yellen, all the super smart people, right? All of them coming on and saying, there's not going to be an inflation. Inflation is transitory. That was the words that they used. Inflation is transitory. Listen, once everybody goes back to work, it'll be fine. I had a whole podcast episode talking about people, or talking to people who were trying to explain how inflation was transitory. Yeah, of course chicken plants are going to charge more for chicken when you have less workers who are processing the chicken. But once all the workers come back in, the prices will go right back down. It's no big deal. That's not what we saw. Not at all, right? But rather than returning spending to normal levels, Biden and congressional Democrats, with the blessing of the Fed, opted to keep government expenditures significantly higher than they had been prior to the pandemic. The decision to continue high levels of government spending, coupled with the Fed's choice to keep interest rates low, and the fallout from Ukraine, caused inflation to soar to levels not experienced in 4 decades. Prices on nearly everything from eggs to milk to gas have skyrocketed, and we're all feeling that. Trust me, there is not a single person on earth that is not feeling the effects of inflation. And some of us are able to afford it more than others, and those that can't, it's really, really starting to hurt. I mean, now we've got student loan payments that have got to be paid for all of a sudden, right? In the midst of this inflation crisis. Now families are going to have to choose, what are they going to cut out? Because those student loan payments, they just started, right? And if the average loan payment is between $100 and $300, like that used to be a whole month of groceries. Now that's like a week of groceries. And now you've just had to decide, oh, you know what? I guess we're not going to eat this week, little Timmy. Sorry about that. But Mom, what are we going to do? I don't know. Inflation's out of control. I have no idea what we're going to do. This article keeps going on to say, incredibly, however, the money supply, the amount of cash in checking deposits, bank savings, has substantially decreased. This means that although prices are still going up, the amount of money available is continuing to drop, putting an unprecedented strain on American families. Now, I have the opportunity to work with a lot of consulting with financial institutions, and it is so true. The amount of balances in all of their accounts, their IRA, their checking, their savings, their money markets, all of those account types are going down, which is exactly what the story is saying here, is that people don't have as much cash as they used to. Savings levels are now lower than they were pre-pandemic. And the reason is very obviously simple. Things just cost so much more, right? And it's because inflation is running rampant. And until we can get this figured out, the American consumer, the world consumer, we're not going to be able to pay, right? We're not going to be able to pay for just living. In the past 110 years, the only other time Americans have seen the money supply drop this sharply was in the 1930s during the height of the Great Depression. So, right, we're talking about savings levels, right? If the amount in your account just dropped by the most it's been since the Great Depression, that's a problem. But the other problem is that prices have not come down. It goes on to say, in the 30s, when the money supply turned negative, prices dropped as well. In our current situation, prices are still going up, despite the collapse of money supply. And this has never occurred before. This is what I'm talking about here. We've got a huge, huge problem. And until we can figure out how to solve inflation, it's just going to continue to get worse. The reduced availability of money caused by the Fed's policies and the Biden admin's inflationary spending has created a dire situation for American families. Increasingly more people eating into their savings and going into debt to cover basic living expenses like food, utilities, and housing. And I went to a conference recently, and this economist up there, he was just going on and on about how the American consumer is in such a great place, right? Credit card spending is at its highest levels. And that means that, hey, you know what? People are stoked to go out and buy stuff. No, that's not what it means. Not at all. In fact, credit cards collectively have topped $1 trillion for the first time ever. The reason that money supply is going down and the reason that credit cards are going up is not because people are so stoked to go out and buy all kinds of new stuff. They're pissed. They're super upset because inflation is robbing them blind. And now they're having to go into debt to pay for that inflation. Now, what's the way to fix this? I don't know. But this article does suggest that a lot of it has to do with excessive government spending by Joe Biden's White House. And realistically speaking, that could be the case. Let's take a look at the outlier data for the S&P 500. This is the AI trading data that we reference every single day. And in fact, we got a sell signal back on September 18th, and it's still looking like a sell signal. And I don't know how long that's going to hold. But if there is a crash on the horizon, you'll be the first to know by having an account at outlier.com. Go to OVTLYR to see why outliers win. Now let's go see what the internet says about this, right? Lots of people saying, hey, we've seen this before, right? Crash callers over and over and over. It's because the date's off. It's already hit us. Yeah, of course it has. It sounds familiar to what they've been saying over and over. It's been predicted every quarter for the last 2 years, right? This person's saying, gets investment advice from Fox News and just laughing about it. But at the end of the day, the case here is that we've got a huge problem with inflation. And realistically speaking, we have not had anything like this happen since the Great Depression, when we had the infamous 1929 stock market crash. And realistically speaking, that could be on the horizon if we don't get this under control. YouTube thinks you're going to love one of these two videos above. Thank you for tuning in to today's Outlier Live. We'll see you on the next episode.